Hello, everybody. Good Friday afternoon. Give you guys a chance to get in here to my live chit chat about bullying. Got something on my mouth here. So, welcome to The Reason We Learn. If it's your first time here, which I doubt because probably only people who know about me are here already. This channel is devoted to all things related to education. And since everything follows from education, that's a whole lot of topics. Today's is going to be directly related to education because I'm going to talk about anti-bullying campaigns, anti-bullying programs that we have seen in schools that really started up right after Columbine, 1999. That was kind of the beginning of the movement, so to speak. And I got to thinking about this today. I just decided to do this today because I'm seeing a lot of bullying in the adult world. I'm seeing a lot of adults being bullied. And for the purposes of this conversation, let me first define bullying, what I mean by bullying, because you guys may disagree. And that's fair. But for you to understand what I'm talking about, let's be on the same page. To me, bullying is when rather than using persuasion, reasoned debate or argument to, persuade somebody to do something or to interact with someone, you use other methods. You can use violence. You can use actual physical aggression. That would be physical bullying. You can use verbal abuse and you can, mock, belittle, call people names, you know, intimidate using your words. And then there's something called relational bullying, where you threaten to take away friendship or to fire somebody, to somehow deny them access to a social group or acceptance in a social group, and you intimidate people that way, that they won't be welcome in certain places that they otherwise might be welcome, or that they're not conforming in the proper way. That would be kind of a relational bullying, relationship bullying. And so it's just basically anytime you're using any of these methods to either get your way or to um, literally hurt someone that you don't like for whatever reason. Okay. Your reason might be a valid reason. It might be a terrible reason. It kind of doesn't matter. If your approach to dealing with it, whatever it is, uses these methods as opposed to, hey, can I talk to you? Let's have a conversation. Let's have a debate. Here's my position. There's your position. Let's, listen to each other. And let's even agree that we might, in the end, not be able to agree and we'll walk away. We may walk away friends. We may walk away enemies or not speaking to each other, but we're just going to cease to interact. We're going to recognize the value inherent in the other person, or I shouldn't say value, but at least recognize the other person's right to exist free from harm, some kind of harm, and just avoid you, like leave it at that. But I'm going to try persuasion first and see how that goes. Anything other than that is bullying. Okay. And what I've noticed, and I started noticing it quite a while ago, actually, back in the 90s, before Columbine. In fact, I started noticing that discipline was falling off in schools. Adults were getting less comfortable disciplining kids in classrooms. It might have been the self-esteem movement, which started earlier. That started actually in the early 90s. The idea that we would get kids to feel better about themselves if we praise them a lot. If we tell them they're doing great things, they're special. They're special. If we sort of recognize each child being special and have strangers constantly affirming how special they are, that would build their self-esteem. They would be happier, and then happier kids do better in school. That was sort of the argument. Not a lot of research behind that, by the way. Yeah, but that was the theory, and it was almost instantly implemented. And I started noticing that the flip side of praise is refusal to criticize. So even when I was still in the classroom, and we're talking very early 90s, there was first an unspoken rule, and then it became an explicit rule that we don't say that the child is wrong. We don't use red pen. We don't say stop that or no, or, the kinds of things that maybe we heard, people in my vintage. I'm 55, for those who don't know me. So we were told no, just straight up no, or you're doing it wrong, or that's the wrong answer. Or it didn't mean it wasn't followed by something like, let me help you, or do you need help understanding this? Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes the person was just a jerk, but there were clear, like, this is right and this is wrong, and this is what you do and this is what you don't do. And it was clear, like the rules applied to everybody. It didn't matter what you look like. It didn't matter if you're male or female. It didn't matter if you're black or white or Hispanic or Asian or anything else. None of that mattered. It was, these are the school rules. You will abide by them. And they were enforced pretty arbitrarily, which had its own problems. It had its own problems that, rules might be enforced arbitrarily. And you still had the problem of kids exploiting that if the adult didn't see it, and you're the one who got caught, I might get away with it. So, but what you could count on is that if the adult did see it, or if you had witnesses, and if there was some way to demonstrate that something was going on, the person violating a rule would probably be punished. The other thing you could kind of count on is if you physically defended yourself from physical bullying, you might, get suspended or get punished, but so would the other person. There wouldn't be a discussion about why they hit you, or why they punched you or shoved you or in any other way laid hands on you. There wasn't really any justification whatsoever. You could say, well, I was defending myself, and you'd get the same punishment, but at least you'd be safe. And generally speaking, the other person wouldn't do it again. That doesn't mean they never would, but tended to be rare that somebody who got their just desserts, would keep at it. Okay. So you had ended up having movies even in the 80s, like, does anyone remember 3 O'Clock High? There was a movie made about a kid who was bullied, and he actually made a date with the bully to have a fight after school at 3 o'clock. And he was terrified of it, whatever. But the mere threat of the fight, and that was a big bully, I mean, a bad guy, that the fact that the kid showed up and had all these people around him to defend him and cheer for him because he had the guts to stick up for himself, got the other guy to run away. So the lesson there for me was, if you stand up for yourself and other people see you doing that, it is rewarded. It's a positive thing. It's a good thing to stand up to bullies. Okay, fast forward, self-esteem movement. And now there are all these people walking around thinking, okay, I've been told I'm special since kindergarten, except here's the problem. Not everyone is special in the school environment. They're just not. That's fairly obvious, right? I mean, some are academically successful, some are athletically successful. Hi, Val. Hi. Thank you so much, Faye. First of all, let me just say hi to everybody who's here. Found your channel recently through the Tom reactions. Love your content. I've been sharing your stuff like crazy. Keep it up. Thank you so much. Welcome. Welcome. I hope you find this show today valuable. So back to what I was saying. The kids are smart. They really are. Even the ones who are not like academically gifted, they're savvy. They figure out pretty quickly what the lay of the land is in a school. And if you've told them in the young years, you're special and here's a trophy and here, I'm not going to tell you anything you do is wrong. And you start getting to the point where you can't keep that up anymore. I mean, as adults, the kids get wise to the fact that you're lying. They have more trouble on tests. They're not doing as well. They're not getting the same good grades. Or if they were doing well early on because the work was really easy, but they were never told where to correct things or improve, they don't really have the tools to do well as they keep going, and they start falling behind. And lots of things can happen. They can feel angry, bitter, sad. They can feel lied to by the adults, and the other kids that start to pick up on it might start picking on that kid, or that kid feeling a victim because now they feel like, but I'm special. How can you give me this low grade? How can you not help me? How can you not make it easier? How can you fill in the blank? Now what you've done is, instead of having a kid who's like, I need help, I'm not doing very well, I guess I don't understand this, you have a kid who felt like you should be giving them good grades or giving them good marks. And now maybe, they run into the one teacher that says that's a 70. It's not 100. You didn't do it right. And now you are victimizing Mr. or Ms. Special. How else are they going to see it? They're special. Okay. And it depends the degree to which they felt special, but this can happen. So now they start to have a sense of victimhood. And now layer on some of the social justice messaging. Oh, by the way, that's because fill in the blank. the reason you've been, you feel like a victim is, and let me give you all these reasons to hold on to. And here's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see a larger percentage of kids, and who are now adults, by the way. We're starting to see these people who started off as just kids who were kind of lied to about how special they were or how successful they were, bumping into reality, not liking reality, handing a new excuse for why reality is uncomfortable. It's still someone else's fault. And now they feel like victims. And now we're giving the victims, the self anointed victims, the weaponry to lash out at others, at people they are now told are scapegoats for their victimhood, or they have just decided are responsible for their plight. We're no longer discussing personal responsibility, either for physical outcomes or emotional outcomes. Even if we find people who can legitimately claim that they were victimized by somebody, either by physical bully or any of the other kind of real bullying that I talked about, we're not really talking to those people and saying, all right, you're right, 100% right, that you were victimized, you were bullied, and that sucks. And I wish I could have been there, and I wish I could have stopped them. But at a certain point, you need to take responsibility for that. You need to own your own feelings about that, and you need to be stronger than that feeling or than that trauma and start to go forward, because it is your life and you're the one living it. You're the one walking through life now. If you don't do that, you're giving more power to those bullies. If you don't do that and you decide you're going to lash out proactively at anybody who remotely resembles your bully in superficial ways, now you're becoming a bully. We don't say that. We don't say that at all. We don't say anything about personal responsibility. We've gotten to the point now where I just got a message today from a friend of mine who's a middle school teacher who reports, because I get these now like every day from the inside. Middle schoolers are learning that if they claim trauma, teachers will let them out of accountability for academics. They're not stupid, the kids. That's what he says. And if they don't bring their materials, they either don't have to do the work or it will be provided for them. Now, given that the kids know they need materials to do their work, come on, they know that. And given that they know they're supposed to do the work, that they're supposed to be accountable for completing the work, I think it's safe to say that the kids have figured out a way to bully the teachers. That's bullying. They're leveraging the fear that the teacher might have about victimizing the kid, or or being racist, or causing some kind of trauma. I mean, what are you going to say to a kid now that we've elevated trauma, just the mere suggestion of I feel trauma, I feel my feelings are real? First of all, we've gone that far, and I feel trauma. Who's going to be that first teacher to step up and say, I don't think so. I don't think that having to do your homework is going to be, further traumatizing to you. I don't think that's the case. Or if it is, then let's take you to the counselor and let's fix that, because you need to do the work. Who's going to do that? No. The path of least resistance is, okay, I didn't further traumatize the kid. I'm told trauma is a thing. I'm told all that matters is how they feel. So I'm going to back off. They feel intimidated. They don't know what's going to happen on their side, and they don't have any support for it. So the kids are now bullying using these tools. But I want to go back and I want to talk about the movement itself. I want to talk about, how do we get here? How do we get to a point where not only are these kids going, I didn't bring my supplies, I didn't do my homework, what are you going to do about it? Right? And there you are, the teacher, feeling like you can't just say, then get out of my class and go to the principal's office, and tomorrow you can come back with your homework and your supplies. Bye. We can't do that. The adult does not have the ability to maintain that level of simple discipline in their class. So now that same kid wants to give grief to the kid across the room about whatever. And you think they're going to be more or less likely now that the teacher has let them pretty much steer the classroom. We're even using language like, we want student-centered classrooms where the student determines the learning environment, and we want a safe learning environment. They don't mean safe like nobody's getting beat up. They mean where the student feels safe from any kind of discipline. That's what they really mean. So we've taken bullying to a level where, it's just downright easy at this point. So let's take a look at the history of the movement. I'm going to share my screen and show you some stuff because I'm going to have to do a little reading, here. Okay. So I found this article, Anti-Bullying History. This is from 2015, by the way. And they talk about, Columbine shooting occurred and 2 teenage boys, etc. And if you recall, one of the arguments was they were bullied, and this was their reaction to bullying. But do you remember what the bullying they alleged was? They said they were bullied verbally and by shunning or by being left out. They didn't talk about, in their diaries, they weren't talking about being punched or beat up. They were mostly talking about the popular kids and how the popular kids were leaving them out. Now, does that sound like bullying to you? Or does that sound more like the typical cliques that we grew up with, where there's the popular kids and the jocks and the freaks and the thises and the that's? And if you weren't in the popular kids, it doesn't mean you were bullied by them necessarily. You might have been also, but you also might not have been. You just might not have been in their clique. And when I was growing up, and I was most certainly not in the popular kid clique, I didn't consider myself bullied by the popular kids for it. I thought that I just was left out. And I didn't have anyone telling me or whispering in my ear that I was special or I should be special, that made me feel especially wounded or victimized. It was just, this sucks. And okay, I'm going to go find other losers or, other kids that are like me or whatever, and we'll be friends. We had our own sort of clique, and that was fine. But we didn't look at the popular kids as bullies. That's not to say I wasn't actually bullied in school. I was actually bullied in school. And in one instance, I stuck up for myself physically and pushed back on the bully, and she never bothered me again. I got suspended, but so did she. In other instances, I was too afraid to go say anything because the bullies in question were varsity athletes at my school, and they were extremely popular, and no one was there to see it except his friends. And I thought that it was just better to leave well enough alone and avoid him. So I would cut a wide path around him after that, but I didn't tell anybody except my closest friends. I just didn't think anyone was going to do anything about it. This is in the mid 80s. And I don't regret that. Some people say, why didn't you go tell? And why didn't you do this? Well, since time immemorial, it has really been difficult for kids to tattle on bullies. You're weighing, cost benefit. Are they going to believe me? What are they going to actually do about it? And if they actually do something about it, are there going to be reprisals? Might it get worse? That has been the case since forever. That's not new. That's not since Columbine. That is called childhood. That's just how it is. That reality seems to have been forgotten by the people who created the anti-bullying movement. They forgot that the whole see something, say something by victims just has never worked. Like, it just doesn't work. It's extremely rare that somebody tells, okay? Because they're afraid of reprisals. And that's when they're just afraid of reprisals from the kids, okay? They're just afraid of that. That was me, afraid of it, didn't do it, don't regret it. It basically ended because as soon as they couldn't get a rise out of me, as soon as they realized I was just not anywhere to be found and just kind of like managed myself, it wasn't fun anymore, I guess. They just ignored me. I was called a lot of names. That hurt more. That hurt a lot more. But what am I going to do? Go to the administration and say they're calling me names because I have a birth defect that makes my jaw stick out and I can't get it surgically fixed until I'm 17? It sucked. It crushed me. I cried myself to sleep all kinds of nights and days, and it was terrible. I was so excited to get the surgery only to look like, I was blown up like a balloon for 2 months afterwards. And, even one of my best friends was like, maybe you need to wear a very, very tall turtleneck. I mean, it was bad. But it still wasn't something I expected the grownups to fix, if that makes sense. I was told enough by my parents and by other adults around me who cared about me that that's them, not you. That's their problem, not you. Not that, oh, you're so special. It was more like, what makes you think you're not going to get picked on? It sucks, and they're mean and they're awful, and you shouldn't treat people like that. But kids will be, kids are going to do horrible things, and you need to not own it. You need to not take it on. You need to feel, we're going to try to prop you up at home and make you realize that they're just full of crap and ignore it. Okay. So it kind of helped toughen me up. They taught me how to be the manager of my own emotions. They didn't say, you're very special. They didn't go running to school and say, my child is being victimized, even though I was legitimately. And They just taught me how to deal with it and be tougher and stronger for it. That is not me excusing bullying. That is not me saying that bullying is a rite of passage. It sucked. I wish it never happened. I don't think I'm necessarily a better person for it. It's just a fact of my life. And I don't, as outrageous as it is, I think if they'd gone to the administration and said something, it would have made it worse, just like me tattling. I think if they told me like, "Oh my gosh, but like, no one should ever bully you because you're perfect," that would have done me more harm because I wouldn't have been able to prepare myself for the inevitability of people not liking me because not everybody's going to like me or anyone for that matter. There are going to be people who straight up hate you for like no reason, who just think your face sucks and, whatever. And it just is how it is. That's life. It's not always pleasant. But instead we were telling kids they were special and there were these optimal ways to treat people and that you should have the expectation at all times of being safe and treated that way. That runs counter to human nature. So we stopped telling kids sticks and stones will break my bones. We stopped telling kids they're going to be sucky people in life and life isn't fair. And I hope it never happens to you, but it's probably going to. So how are you going to deal with it? And so we stopped giving personal power to individual children and we started setting the stage for collective guilt of all of us for things we have no control over. And we flipped it over so that we empowered bullies to bully more and call it virtue. Well, how do we do that, Deb? Okay, well, I'm about to explain it to you. So, first of all, look what it says in the article. The worst acts of violence, homicide, suicide, are usually committed by those who feel like victims. Notice it said those who feel like victims. You can be legitimately victimized and not feel like a victim. Being a victim, I've said in one of my videos before, is something that happens to you and you're a victim. Feeling like a victim or calling yourself a victim like it's your identity is a choice. It doesn't need to become your identity. I don't feel like a victim and I've had a lot of bullying, but no, I'm a survivor. I'm strong. I have personal power. They didn't take from me. They couldn't have taken from me. That's what I was taught when I was growing up. They can't take your dignity from you, Deb. They can't take your self-esteem from you. You have to give it to them. Eleanor Roosevelt said that. No one can make you a doormat without you first lying down. So, unfortunately, what we often fail to see is that on our zeal to protect students, we offer diminished help when our first act is to label students who feel like victims, which immediately minimizes their perspective, value, and hope for empathy and understanding. I am so grateful to every adult in my life who refused to call me a victim. So grateful. Who taught me how to fight, who taught me how to not care. That's how I became the person I am today, not the bullying. The messaging I got about it. Had they told me something different, I might be a very different person. 2 approaches to bullying. Prompted by a desire to help victims and put a stop to school violence, the anti-bullying movement has been on a crusade since 1999 to eliminate mean behavior among students and create policies and programs that rescue victims. What approach have they chosen over the past 15 years? The indirect legislative approach. Oh, don't we all love this? There ought to be a law. There ought to be a law. We always forget 2 things: enforceability and unintended consequences. Yeah. Okay. For the most part, bullying experts developed an indirect approach to bullying intervention. This is seen in the fact that most anti-bullying programs used in schools since 1999 have centered putting responsibility on adults to change the environment around victims, rather than changing victims directly. Why? All right. Remember, we're supposed to tell them they're all special and perfect all the time and that everyone should like them and they should get along in all situations. They should share. They should be friendly. They should be, like there's no like right to discriminate against who your friends are anymore for any damn reason. Like, I just don't like that kid. They seem mean. I don't want to be friends with them. Sometimes kids have great gut instincts. And then teachers are like well-meaning teachers. Well, I told the story about my youngest daughter the other day. I mean, she was like 10 years old. And a kid was following her around like a little stalker, like following her, really making her uncomfortable, just was up in her business every minute of every day. And when she just didn't like it and didn't want to be around him and didn't want to be friends with him, he kept butting into her conversations and she just felt very uncomfortable, couldn't put her finger on it. He started crying and be like, she doesn't like me, and making a big scene to make her look like she was some kind of meanie because they'd all been taught play nice and be nice to everyone, use nice words, nice hands, and let's do the bucket thing. Fill your bucket with nice words and we all have to be nice to each other all the time. Except, no, we don't. That doesn't mean you should be mean. It just means that some people don't deserve our niceness constantly and we don't have to be friends with everyone. We are allowed to have personal boundaries and we shouldn't have to explain them to anybody as long as we're not being overtly nasty. She wasn't. She just didn't want to hang out with him. She just wanted to mind her own business, be with her own friends. And she was pulled into the guidance counselor's office because this kid was crying victim. And what they said to her was, couldn't you find it in your heart to be his friend? Isn't there some way you could find to be his friend? And she was, I imagine, put on the spot in front of the kid. And she's like, no. Yeah, like, I mean, you're 10. She told the truth to her credit. And she got pushback. And I called and I asked about it. I said, can you explain your procedure, your policy, your approach? Girl followed around by boy in the Me Too generation, and you're putting pressure on her to be friends with him when she just doesn't want to and she doesn't know why. Well, we just have a policy where we want the safe environment around all the students, want them to feel like it's a friendly, welcoming, inclusive environment. And we just don't feel that she's being inclusive in her group of friends. We've heard stories about the UK where they don't even allow best friends because it's not inclusive. But what's the flip side of that? You change the environment and what happens? Most bullying experts believe victims are powerless to effectively address their social problems on their own. This indirect approach focuses efforts on the bully, and the environment around the victim is based on a legislative policing systems. These systems include anti-bullying laws and policies, some with zero tolerance. So if you're even like involved on the fringes in something someone calls bullying, you can be punished because of zero tolerance. Nobody wants to hear your side of the story. Okay. Empowering bystanders. There couldn't possibly be an unintended consequence of empowering a bunch of little Lord of the Flies like preteens to, police other kids' behavior. No, I'm sure they'd just be pure as the driven snow and honest at every moment. Many bullying experts believe that empowering bystanders helps build student empathy and develop social problem-solving skills in spite of potential physical and social risks. So again, negating thousands of years of human nature and everything we know about people's, especially kids, ability to go off and form affinity groups all by themselves and find ways to call somebody the out person. We're empowering them now to do that. Policing classrooms and hallways. The responsibility for policing student behavior is placed on teachers. Unfortunately, most bullying takes place away from adult supervision. Yeah, the kids get smart. Build a wall, they build a taller ladder. Well, I'm not going to do it in class. I'm going to do it on recess. I'm going to do it around the corner, out of sight of the camera, where nobody can see. I'm going to do it during transition, where the kids coming in the classroom and kids going out of the classroom. The teacher can't be all places at all times. And I'm going to make it look like I just bumped into you, even though we all know that you shoved the person or whatever. They get very smart. Punishing, disciplining, expelling, or trying to reform bullies. When policing fails, as it inevitably will, authorities are faced with the choice of disciplining, expelling, or trying to reform bullies. All require extensive investments of time and effort on the part of school staff. Unfortunately, most of these indirect efforts have had ineffective results. A 2013, okay, we're 2021, 2013 study of 50,000 students conducted by University of Texas in Arlington reported that students in schools that had implemented anti-bullying policies in place were more likely to be bullied than students in schools that had not implemented anti-bullying policies. All right. One possible reason for this is the students who are victimizing their peers have learned the language from the anti-bullying campaigns and programs. And let's see, the schools with intervention say you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. But through the programs, the student become highly exposed to what a bully is, and they know what to do or say when questioned by parents or teachers. The study suggested that future direction should focus more on sophisticated strategies rather than just implementing blah, blah, blah. Okay. the questions that arise from other studies. So then we have our indirect legislative approaches targeted helping victims backfiring, hurting our students. Should we rethink our solutions, etc.? And then it says victims feel their rights have been violated. So now we have people saying my rights have been, but you have to protect me. So now you're a busy teacher, a busy administrator, you're a school, and kids are coming to you saying, you have to protect me. I was bullied. Then there are all kinds of things you have to do. You have to take care of the problem. You have to get the other party to admit it. If you can't, you've got to figure out some way to deal with it when you can't get them to admit it. You have to, now shelter the person who accused because there might be backlash. You, the teacher, might get backlash, etc. It starts to become such a headache that the incentive stops being, okay, I've got to follow the anti-bullying laws and I'm going to go through all this paperwork and I'm going to do all the things to, I didn't see anything. I wasn't there. I don't know. I can't. What? And they just don't participate. And of course, the lawyers have a hard time unless there are cameras, unless there's something you can go in and threaten lawsuits, but they stop documenting what's going on. They just stop documenting, or they turn to the students and try to persuade them not to report. Look what happened in my local high school here in Myers Park. Girls have been alleging for years they've been sexually assaulted on campus, raped even. They've been going to the principal and saying, I was sexually assaulted and here's my bruises and my damage and this, and he did it. And there was even a case of a kid who, by virtue of threatening suicide on the campus while confessing, basically confessed. And the students were still told, if you file a false accusation, you could be prosecuted, you could be this, you could be that, like telling the victim, it's too much trouble, basically, and not doing anything or not reporting it, not documenting how many weapons are showing up on campus, not documenting the violations for smoking on campus, all these kinds of things. They don't document, they don't do the paperwork, they don't have to deal with it. What's the lesson for the students who never get punished? Nothing happens. I can get away with it. I can do whatever I want. And it's too much trouble for them to implement this really convoluted legal pathway to punishing me. And they're going to have to prove all kinds of things happen. They can't just themselves say, I know you did it. Cut the crap. No, now we got to, you have a right to this defense and all these kinds of things. And what's it telling the victim? Real victims, like of sexual assault. I am completely unsafe here. They can't help me. And that's a person, like I said, where you really need somebody to deal with a rapist. It's not somebody hurting your feelings. And no, they're not going to do anything. It's too much paperwork. But there are now people also, real victims and teachers who don't want to deal with it, are not going to deal with it. Who do you think are more motivated? Real victims who are afraid of reprisals, or fake victims who aren't the least bit afraid of reprisals because they're doing something for a different purpose? They have support behind them to intimidate teachers or intimidate other people. And they know that if they yell loud enough and long enough, they'll have to be accommodated as long as the type of victimhood is socially acceptable. In other words, like it makes them virtuous. And that's what we have done now with critical theory. Now that's what we've done with critical theory. So we've taken this whole messy process that was supposed to help real victims, made it almost impossible to help real victims, because it's just too convoluted or it doesn't work. It straight up doesn't work and empowers bullies. And then we handed it yet another weapon and said, hey, bullies who like to use social bullying and, relationship bullying and verbal abuse and, all this civil rights violation stuff, allege racism, allege microaggressions, allege that somebody's discriminating against you, allege that somebody is creating trauma and you feel traumatized by their behavior. And don't accuse other students as much as you accuse the teachers. Start with the teachers. Make them feel like they got to twist themselves into pretzels and change the curriculum and everything. And then go and, also accuse the students that won't play ball. That's what we're seeing right now. That is the root of cancel culture. So the direct psychological approach, the one we haven't tried, this one is not to change the world around the clients, but to help them change their own attitudes and behaviors. Okay? Help them recognize and understand the problems, to show them that they contribute to their problems. People go, are you blaming the victims? Oh my God. And it's like, no, you're not blaming, you're empowering. They've done studies with rape victims and asked, which was more empowering to you, being told, okay, let's take a look at this. First of all, what happened to you was not your fault and it was wrong. And that person should be punished to the full extent of the law. Let's take a look at how you might prevent it in the future. Let's talk about not drinking late at night around people you don't know. Let's talk about not taking drinks from people you don't know. Let's talk about making sure you know your dates a little better, etc. That is not blaming the victim. That is telling them you actually have more control over your future, just, victimization than you think you have. Let's take a look at some of these things and see if you can change them. But it's extremely controversial. Nobody wants to believe the reality right in front of their face that giving victims this empowerment actually makes them feel more comfortable ever going out in public or ever, going back to school or whatever you might need them to do than saying it's 100% not your fault and it's always everybody else's fault and there's nothing you could have done and that's it. That's it. There's nothing you could have done. Could have happened to anybody. I mean, it may be true in the strictest sense of the word, but it's not very empowering. It's actually quite terrifying. Like I wasn't taught that. I wasn't taught, hey, this could have happened to anybody. I was taught, look, you're small, you were, out early on your bike alone. These guys are out, trolling around looking for somebody to pick on. You're an easy target. Maybe next time go with a friend. Safety in numbers, avoid them, take a different path where they can't follow you. And I'm sure there are people out there going, but that's blaming you. No, it's not blaming me. I felt so much better. I was like, I'm going to do that. That sounds like a good plan. Thank you. Because my only goal was not to be picked on anymore. I really wasn't looking for people to validate me and tell me how special and wonderful I was. I just wanted to not get bullied anymore. That's it. That's all I wanted. No convoluted process. But we don't do this. We don't do this. In contrast, what we do now is, and I've got some stuff saved in my bookmarks, see if I can find it. Look at this. We do this. We have an equity hotline in schools. Call this number, recognize it, report it, stop it. Racism, discrimination, and hate. Well, do you think this is in an elementary school, by the way? How many fifth graders do you know are going to be able to define those words in a way that's objective? First of all, they're not objective terms. Then imagine you're empowering kids, 10 years old, 8 years old, whatever age, to tattle about things that are subjective based on anything, on their feelings, their perceptions, their misperceptions, or maybe their desire to get someone in trouble. And now, imagine there's some value attached to what the person looks like who's doing it. Okay? I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just saying, just imagine it. It could happen. It could easily happen where you could be two white kids. And one white kid goes, that white kid was violating, discriminating against that black kid. They want to earn some virtue points. They want to get in good with their friend. They just, whatever, like they're on hyper alert for every last little microaggression on planet Earth. Okay. So, is this going to really help, or might we be handing weapons to a new generation of bullies and cancel culture people and having elementary school level struggle sessions? This is the group that put this out. Or I shouldn't say this is a group. This came from this district. This is in Kansas. And you might be thinking, Kansas? Were you thinking California? Were you thinking New York? It's Kansas. It's Kansas. Okay. The mission statement. Okay, it's committed to promoting a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment for all students, staff, and community stakeholders, blah, blah, blah. But it produced this charming thing. See it? There it is on the bottom, diversity and engagement at that school district. And these are spreading. This is contagious. It's going all over the country. That sounds like a great idea. Except what else have we seen since 1999? Have we seen the school shootings disappear? It's just, no. Have we seen bullying disappear? Pretty sure not. Have we seen this thing called cancel culture crop up? Have we seen people on TikTok who are just like outing people? Wasn't there a girl who was like, a cheerleader and she liked Trump or something and everybody ganged up on her and her admission to college was rescinded? I mean, we've empowered people to say, I'm traumatized by your opinions. Ergo, you should lose your job, lose your friends, lose your boyfriend, lose your husband, lose your dog. What are you like? People have been empowered to do terrible things. And that's not to say that the people in the receiving end of that are good, perfect, wonderful little angels. I'm just saying that this is not conflict resolution. This is not eliminating bullies and making safe school environments. This is just adding a new layer to bullying. It's creating something new. Okay. And we were also still hearing, and I'm putting together, I did an interview with a gentleman the other day who was gracious enough to honor me with his story, his testimonial about his son who was bullied literally to death. And I've got to edit it and get it out here, but I wanted to do this first. I wanted to educate you about the subtle, passive aggressive ways that kids can be bullied, and that all of the anti-bullying programs in the world just don't seem to work because we're not empowering victims. We're empowering bullies at new kinds of bullies. Here's another one. Let me find the other one that I thought was so amazing. Where is it? Check this out. This would be a kindergarten. Do you think this is a worthwhile exercise for any child? I'm just curious. Now, it might seem innocuous, like, so what? They're matching themselves to colors to show that people come in all different kinds of skin colors. But why? Why? Wouldn't it be more effective to just put up, like at Christmas time, put up a black Santa? And if the kids go, huh, so a Santa can be black? Yep. Sure. Any reason you have a problem with that? And then you can have a conversation about how, of course, Santa could be black could be brown, could be white. First of all, Santa's, we don't want to tell the little kids Santa, but just like, why not? And then you can have a whole conversation about that, about stereotypes or whatever, elicited by the children in an innocent, nice way. Just be like, of course, anybody can be, yeah, there's no difference to skin, right? You can have the conversation. Because you should. I'm not suggesting you just like blinders on. Nope, we're all exactly the same. Because that's obviously not true. But let it be elicited by the kids in a natural, organic way and talk about it like human beings. This is messed up. This is telling these kids that there's something about that skin color, and especially because I know what comes after that. I know about the, oppressor, oppressed, systemic racism conversations that are coming as they get into first, second, third, fourth, et cetera grade, that I know that once they've been identified that you are this, okay, they now will know where they stand when they get to that conversation. This woman here, after 6 years as a teacher in Connecticut, she resigned. She resigned because she was bullied by her peers and principal, et cetera, into political activism in the classroom, which she refused to do. And it's not because she's a right-wing zealot. She's in Connecticut. It's not because, she disagrees with like every single point that they might make in some, lesson or whatever. It's because she doesn't think that it's right to lie to parents. She doesn't think it's right to brainwash their children into one belief system. And she doesn't want to sign, emails with quotes like educator in a system of oppression is either revolutionary or an oppressor. That is bullying, guys. That's verbal bullying. That's telling her you will submit, you will do what we say, or we will call you something completely horrendous. Who wants to be called an oppressor? Who wants to be called a Nazi? Who wants to be called a racist? Nobody. It's a kind of bullying. It's a kind of bullying. Okay. So then we'll get to how it can be, so here's a dad. This is tragic. This dad was suing, this is in this past year, because the school failed to stop his son from being bullied. It's a tragic, tragic story. Just like the one that I heard the other day about, the school wouldn't do anything, couldn't do anything, because realistically they can't. Because kids will be kids, and the more tools we give them to bully out of sight or to bully in creative ways, the more skilled they'll get at it, and the harder it is to do anything. But so he's suing the school. It's tragic he has to get to this point, and he's able to sue the school because of the legislation. And people might say, well, what's that going to do? Well, I feel for him. I mean, it's just, I don't know that the lawsuit is going to fix anything. It's not going to bring his son back, and it's not going to make the school do anything differently because realistically they can't. And then I was looking at, let's see if I can find this thing that I found, and maybe it's down here. It was also about how kids adjust to bullying. And I can't find it at the moment. Oh, wait. It was Greg Lukianoff. I mentioned it the other day. He made a comment about how kids adapt to bullying and they get super smart about it. I wish I could find it. They get super smart about it. Can't find it. And they learn how to use the language to bully more. And they do it really, really fast, like scary, scary fast. Here it is. Okay. So this is from a New York Times article that I read about the private schools in New York. You may have heard about Dalton School and some of the teachers coming in and using a form of bullying on other teachers and parents, saying, if you don't, they had a list of demands. If you don't, meet our demands and do everything we want, we're going to quit, we're going to strike, et cetera. And they were pretty outrageous demands for diversity, equity, inclusion, claiming trauma and discrimination and all kinds of things at one of the most left-leaning schools in the country. Okay. And so this is a line pulled out of the article. The article wasn't saying the same things I'm saying, but this was just a throwaway little line in there. Some teenagers learn to adopt the language of anti-racism and wield it against peers like a weapon, is one throwaway line from this piece. But if someone were to truly kick over that rock, they'd find a whole writhing, horrible world to explore. Yes, they would. We are teaching our kids how to be just like the Red Guard in Mao's China and hold little struggle sessions, which is bullying. There's no other word for it. And we're making it virtue. And here's what Greg says. Kids are socially very, very smart. Within a couple days of the first anti-bullying DEI sensitivity program, so going all the way back to when it was just anti-bullying, doesn't matter what you call it, within a couple of days, 5% of kids figured out a new way to dominate other kids using the new system. So every time we try to implement an anti-bullying program, just like we're trying to implement anti-racism, all that's happening is people are taking that language, that vocabulary, those impulses, and flipping them over and using them. Okay. And then some people asked him some more questions. And he said, somebody asked, I wonder what percentage of teens have sociopathic or narcissistic tendencies already? Like right out of the gate, baseline. Our best numbers say around 4% of the population is sociopathic. So maybe I even underestimated. I don't think gaming systems necessarily makes you a sociopath. It doesn't. Maybe just human or particularly a teenager. Okay. So, but imagine if you are sociopathic and then you are gaming the system. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there. Here's an article I found, why telling on bullies backfires. Because remember I said it backfires. It's not helpful to tell victims, if you see something, say something. The people who are not afraid of backlash are bullies. Only real victims are terrified to say anything. So this is from 2014. And he has a transparency declaration that he has some financial interest in something, but I've still found some of this interesting. And it said, important research study recently made the news. Sibling bullying has been going up in recent years. This follows on the heels of another important study that found that kids who attend schools that have anti-bullying programs are more likely to be bullied than those who attend schools without such programs. We saw that in the other article. Why is this happening? For the past 15 years, the modern world has been conducting war against bullying. All of society has embraced the anti-bullying message. Schools have been declaring that they won't tolerate bullies and that kids must tell the adult authorities whenever they are bullied so they can step in and make the bullying stop. Parenting magazines have been bombarding parents with warnings they must not tolerate any bullying among their children, and they must intervene immediately whenever it occurs. And they must get therapy for their children who are bullies. Why is the situation in school and home getting worse? Shouldn't it be getting better? Scientific thinking requires that we consider, please listen to this carefully, guys, because this applies to everything going on in schools today, everything, including academic results, that we consider that our interventions may have unintended negative consequences. We don't just assume that because our intentions are good, the results will be positive. If we implement an intervention intended to solve a problem, but the problem gets worse, we must seriously entertain the possibility that our intervention had something to do with it. It became clear in the 1930s that the war against alcohol was causing more harm than good, and the war was abolished. More recently, it's become recognized that the war against marijuana has been causing more harm than good, and that too is in the process of being abolished. But because the war on bullying sounds so unquestionably good, we continue to intensify it. We're intensifying it. I believe that anti-racism is just a sort of stepchild of, or the reason people are adopting it so quickly is it's already been introduced in the form of anti-bullying. It's just a new form. They're saying, oh, the reason before it was the reason kids aren't achieving is their self-esteem is lousy, so let's praise them constantly. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, you know what it is? It's the bullying. Look, two kids shot up a school and they actually wanted to bomb it and then shoot it. It's the self-esteem and the bullying that they got that, okay, so we'll put in anti-bullying. Well, that's not really working. There's still kids bullying. And the disparity in the outcomes seems to have a racial component. We need to make the anti-bullying a racist thing. We're going to make it anti-racism now. What do you think the odds are that things are going to get better? I'm going to go with 0. Okay? So, the common wisdom is how to deal with bullying is based not on science but on belief. One of the basic tenets of the anti-bullying creed is that kids must tell adult authorities when they're bullied. While this instruction should be treated as a hypothesis that needs to be tested, bullying researchers treat it like an axiom, a self-evident truth that requires no proof, despite the huge body of research showing that the popular bullying prevention programs that rely on telling don't work well or even increase bullying. Telling remains an unshaken foundation of the anti-bullying dogma. And then it says, before I continue, it is important to remember what bullying is today. The word bullying conjures up images of criminal psychopaths committing physical violence against defenseless children. Of course, the authorities need to be involved in such cases, but such acts are rare. According to the modern psychological definition used by schools and society, bullying is when people treat you in a way you don't like. Thus, most acts of bullying are insults, rumors, gestures, social exclusion, and typical childhood aggression that doesn't cause injury. Virtually everyone engages in such activities, and we can all be accused of bullying based on the modern criteria. Even many victims of bullying are accused of bullying because they responded aggressively to being bullied. I wasn't accused of bullying when I pushed back against my bully. The definition was clearer then. That was 1977, I believe. Now, if you push back even with words against someone bullying you, you go to the restorative justice meeting just like the person who is screaming and yelling and threatening you with violence. You were both involved. So, the established belief is that if kids just told the authorities that they're bullying, but the adults would be able to make it stop. Like, the fact that anyone believes this tells me that there are a lot of adults involved in defining these policies who either were bullies or were never bullied. Because we know, right, guys? We know it doesn't work. We who were bullied. And I mean really bullied, like, not just a little bit here or there, people hurt our feelings. Let's see. It would be terrific if that were true. And it could be true if the adults actually did what worked most reliably, which is to teach kids how to handle the bullying on their own without taking the side against those they complain about. What is cancel culture? I don't like your opinions. I don't like the way you behave. I don't like what you said. You hurt my feelings. I need to end you. I need to end you. These are people who were taught zero tolerance and intolerance of intolerance, the Marcusean ideal. Okay, they were taught that whether it was overt or covert. That's what these anti-bullying campaigns have taught our children. And now some of those children are in their 20s and working for places like The Intercept, where they get the founder to resign because they bullied him right out of a job. Well, I didn't say bullied. I shouldn't say that. They got the investors to demand that he censor himself, which is a form of bullying. I don't like what you're saying, and I'm going to pressure other people to censor you. And if that's not what you want to do, you're going to have to leave. Look at Barry Weiss. These are adults with careers. People with skills, people with talent, people who have proven themselves time and again to be wonderful, decent, thoughtful, intelligent people who wouldn't hurt a fly, have been bullied right out of their jobs. Now, thankfully, she's so amazing. She's doing great on Substack. Go subscribe. But it still shouldn't have happened. She shouldn't have been able to make that decision voluntarily. Like, our interests are not aligned. Think I'm going to go, but it shouldn't have been the kind of bullying, that was happening. And, anyway, let me just continue here. So it says, a guaranteed method of getting people to despise you is to tell on them to the authorities. Try it out. The next time your neighbor plays music loudly at night, rather than talking to them directly, call the police on them. See how your neighbors treat you from then on. Let's see. Most experts in sibling rivalry recognize that the major cause is triangulation. The parents are the most important people in the lives of both kids. Once the parents get in the middle, playing detective, judge, and punisher, each child desperately wants the parent on their side. The kids become prosecuting attorneys against each other, trying to get their sibling in trouble with the most important person in the world to them. As they plead their case, the two sides get angry at each other. The loser of the judgment becomes angry at the parent as well, etc. So triangulation, you involve the adult. Now, obviously, a teacher or an administrator is not your favorite person in the world, so it doesn't hurt quite as much. But once that adult is involved and triangulation is on the table, all peaceful resolution, that liver's gross, all peaceful resolution is off the table. The ability to go to that person directly and deal with it is off the table. I've seen this with my kids and their bullies, etc. When you are told go to the authorities and then the authorities do nothing, you've sold that kid a bill of goods. You've imperiled them, actually, if they have the guts to tell you in the first place, which most of them don't, and that's probably smarter. But you're not filling the gap. You're not, so it's not enough. Like, for example, if I told my daughter at the time that she was being bullied, all the empowering things, I told her that, but the school didn't. The school wasn't reinforcing that, wasn't telling the other kids that, wasn't, making that be the order of the day. It was saying, no, tell us, tell us, tell us. And then she says, okay, I'm going to go tell, and tells, and it backfires and nothing happens. They can't stop the kid, of course. Now she's tattled. The kid knows the adults can't do anything. I could double down. The kid who was told just go to the adults feels betrayed, lied to, and has no respect for the authorities who have said, trust us, we'll take care of you. Zero respect. Starts to see other adults who claimed to care as uncaring, unworthy of their respect. So you have the bullies who obviously don't respect the adult authority, but you also have the silent, seething hatred of the victims who look at the adults with contempt. That's not really a healthy way to feel for the kid or a healthy environment for the teachers. You can't really effectively teach a child who holds you in contempt. It's just not going to work very well. Okay. So if that's the environment we want, is this toxic soup of resentment, fear, anger, frustration, etc., then keep on keeping on, because that's what anti-bullying does. That's exactly what it does. So that was this article there. And I have a book. I'm going to just read you like a couple things from it, but I highly recommend this book. It's got a lot of great research in it. It is called Nurture Shock by Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman. Okay. This book came out in 2009. I'm aghast at how few people ever reference it because it was a New York Times bestseller. But you would think no one who bought it ever read it because there's research in here, like actual scientific research, all of which is listed in the back, by the way. If you go to the notes, it has all the studies, who did them, where you can find them to read the abstracts and all that. Actually, they put the abstracts right in here. You can go read the whole study if you want to, pay for them. But I remembered from my reading of this book, I said, I think there was something in here. Well, first of all, there's a chapter in the beginning called The Inverse Power of Praise, which I commend to your reading. That goes into why the self-esteem movement was a bust. But I want to just talk about this chapter, Plays Well with Others. Plays Well with Others. Why modern involved parenting has failed to produce a generation of angels. Now, what they just described, the triangulation, is modern involved parenting. That's exactly what that is. Okay. I'm going to go back to this just because it's a better picture. Okay. Actually, no, you know what? Let's go back to this one just to keep it fresh in your mind. And for anyone who's just joining, oh wait, I have to find it again. The, that wonderful image. Here it is. Here we go. Okay. That, so, and whether you call it involved parenting, involved teaching, anything where we were kind of like getting all up in the kids' business, trying to get them to be nice. This was about a study to figure out if kids being exposed to violence and entertainment and gaming would make kids more violent. Okay. There, remember that was a big deal that, they thought, well, I bet if kids watch a lot of violent TV shows and play violent games, they're going to turn out to be more violent kids. So, some researchers set out to study this in about 2007 or so. And they were already experts in media exposure. And they spent 2 years monitoring students in Minnesota preschools. And they were cross-referencing the children's behavior against parent reports of what television show and DVDs they were watching. So ranging from 2.5 to 5 years old, they were well-off children from well-off families is what they started with, okay? Eventually they got to kids from very diverse backgrounds and they to test their theories. So they expected to see kids who watch violent shows like Power Rangers and Star Wars that would be more physically aggressive during playtime at school. And they also expected kids who watched educational television like Arthur and Clifford the Big Red Dog would not just be less aggressive, but they would be more pro-social, kind, generous, eager to share, inclusive, all those things, right? Sharing, helpful, whatever. These weren't original hypotheses, but the study's importance was its long-term methodology. Ostrov and Gentile, those are their names, would be able to track the precise incremental increase in aggression over the course of the preschool years. That's what they were looking to do. So they sat down they took notes watching these kids, and they were trained to distinguish between physical aggression, relational aggression, which I talked about, and verbal aggression. Physical aggression included grabbing toys from other children's hands, pushing, pulling, and hitting of any sort. Relational aggression at the preschool age involved saying things like, "You can't play with us," or just ignoring a child who wanted to play and withdrawing friendship or telling lies about another child, all of which attack a relationship at its core. And now we are seeing this with adults, right? That's relational aggression or relational bullying. Verbal aggression included calling someone a mean name, like, or saying things like "shut up" or "you're stupid" or etc. And sometimes it came with physical aggression. So they cross-referenced their observations with the teachers. It was a very involved study. Again, you can get the book and look in the back and see what the study was. At first glance, the scholars' hypotheses were confirmed, but something unexpected was also revealed in the data. The more educational media the children watched, the more relationally aggressive they were. They were increasingly bossy, controlling, and manipulative. This wasn't a small effect. It was stronger than the connection between violent media and physical aggression. So what they found was that in some shows, relational aggression is modeled at a high rate. Ostrov theorized that many educational shows spend most of the half hour establishing a conflict between characters and only a few minutes resolving that conflict. Preschoolers have a difficult time being able to connect information at the end of a show to what happened earlier. It's likely that young children do not attend to the overall lesson in the manner an older child or adult can, but instead learn from the behaviors shown. So if you think, I'm going to have my kid watch Arthur and they're going to learn how to get along better with people because they resolve the fight, at the end, except for the whole first 25 minutes or so, they're like, "Shut up, stupid. I don't want to be friends with you. I'm going to tell a lie about you. Blah, blah, blah. You can't play with us." Okay. And they see who's popular in the show and who's not popular in the show. And they see those things and they internalize it and they just copy, they mimic. They don't have the same sense of like morality and ethics that we do as adults. They don't see cause effect the way we do. And they certainly don't connect what happened at the very end to what happened in the beginning. And yet here we are as adults projecting our adult sensibilities onto these teeny tiny children. And we start in preschool and we keep going and going and going and reinforcing the same message of share, be inclusive, say nice things, don't do this, don't do that. And we never empower them to make decisions for themselves. We don't talk about universal values. I think I'm because I'm coming back to this, I'm gonna leave it up. We don't talk about how, first you have to accept who you are. We don't talk about self-love and pride and accomplishments. We don't talk about how it's okay to make mistakes and it doesn't mean you're a terrible person. You can be redeemed. Okay? We don't do that. We're so focused outward on here's how to treat other people, not how to treat yourself or how to think yourself. Like I said, we heard sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Personal power. If all your friends are jumping off a bridge, it doesn't mean you should do it too. Today it's, let me help you up. Everyone's jumping off the bridge. That must mean it has validity. So then moving on, he says, okay, data from a team at Ithaca College confirms Ostrov's assessment. There is a stunning amount of relational and verbal aggression in kids' television. And let's see, they studied 470 half-hour television programs commonly watched by children, recording every time a character insulted someone, called someone a mean name, or put someone down. They revealed that 96% of all children's programming includes verbal insults and put downs, averaging 7.7 put downs per half hour episode. Programs specifically considered pro-social had 66.7%. They still contained lots of insults. Had the insult lines been in real life, they would have been breathtaking in their cruelty. How do you sleep at night knowing you're a complete failure? From SpongeBob SquarePants. And then let's see. The wild kingdom of childhood can be mystifying at times. Modern involved parenting should seem to result in a sea of well-mannered, non-aggressive kids. As soon as an infant shows some indication of cognitive understanding, the parents start teaching about sharing, kindness, compassion. And in theory, fighting and taunting and cruelty should have all gone the way of kids playing with plastic bags and lead paint, etc. The easy explanation has always been to blame aggression on a bad home environment. There's an odd comfort in this paradigm as long as your home is a good one. Aggression won't be the problem. Yet aggression is simply too prevalent for this explanation to suffice. It would imply a unique twist on the Lake Wobegon effect that almost every parent is below average. Aggressive behavior has traditionally been considered an indicator of psychological maladaptation. It was seen as inherent, aberrant, deviant, and in children a warning sign of future problems. Commonly cited causes of aggression were conflict in the home, corporal punishment, violent television, and peer rejection at school. While no scholar is about to take those assertions back, the leading edge of research suggests it's not as simple as we thought, and many of our solutions are actually backfiring. So, nurture shock. The so-called solution is producing this. I'm not going to read it out loud. You can read it for yourself. This is written by someone who is presumably an adult. This is supposedly an adult person. And if you read this essay, which is quite insane, it reads like a toddler having a temper tantrum. This is the culmination, in my opinion, of telling kids you should share, you should be inclusive, you should be nice to others. You owe others that. Others. Not you, not your boundaries. Can't you find it in your heart to do for others? Why are you so selfish to others? Other people need you. Other people have a right to blah, blah, blah. Even on the victim side, making it all about you have a right to perfect safety in the classroom. No, you freaking don't. You have a right to feel this. You have a right to feel that. No, you don't. You don't. Because we didn't go and empower victims of real bullying, because we didn't go and say to our kids, you know, I'm sorry, honey, but not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to share with you. And you don't have to share with everybody. What you do have to do is treat other people the way you would like them to treat you. The golden rule, that if you want people to treat you well, it's a good idea. Works out well, okay? Probably won't work out well if you don't treat people well, but treating people well does not mean sharing your stuff on demand. You have a right to say no. Starts early. You have a right to say, I don't want to be friends with you, in whatever way you can phrase that it isn't mean. You even have a right to say it and be mean. You do. You have a right to do that. You have a right to that. And they have a right to think you're a jerk. That's how life works. No one is going to, you don't have a right, and nor do you have an obligation to other people's feelings. Okay? I'm not condoning insulting people. I'm not. I'm saying that if more people were personally responsible for their behaviors and their emotions about other people's behaviors, we wouldn't have this temper tantrum on a page, which unfortunately has more than enough power to create policy in places like New York City and our schools. I'm sorry, you must wear the you know what every day at school because other people's feels, because you have an obligation to others. Why are you so uncaring about others? Where do you think this comes from? It doesn't come from a vacuum. This is not happening in a vacuum. This woman, who ought to be roundly ridiculed by one and all, who ought not to have had this published because whatever it is, I guess, well, she can publish whatever she wants, but I mean, no one should be reading this, really, because, and I don't know how many people have liked it or tweeted it, I really don't know, but this individual is having a temper tantrum on a page and probably getting likes and shares for it, not for, how lunatic it is. It's nothing more. It's straw man argument after straw man argument. It's insane. It's insane. Truly. That's where we've come to. That's what this leads to. So I would, I guess, ask again what my title said. How's that anti-bullying program working out for you? I believe, I don't know if you agree, but I believe it has brought us to cancel culture. I believe it's why anti-racism resonates with people, or it's my previous guest today, Paul Galata, was talking to me about school boards, and he was talking about all the research he's done into critical theory and critical pedagogy and all that. And he said it really comes down to BS being rammed down our throats by bullies. I agree. That's what it is. It is BS being rammed down our throats by bullies. Every single person in a position of power right now who is telling parents they have no right to complain or calling them names, calling them racist, etc., is bullying. Every administrator who is doing the same in a school, every teacher, you saw the teacher, if you watched my video about the Utah teacher, bullying her students. We've made it possible through anti-racism and all of this junk to empower teachers to bully students. The guy who thankfully was exposed by Project Veritas and fired or put on leave, unpaid leave, and likely will be fired, he was bullying students by telling the kid who felt uncomfortable about the Antifa flag that, well, I don't know what to tell you if you're uncomfortable by a flag that's anti-fascist, so I guess, maybe you shouldn't align with that ideology, calling him a fascist between the lines, a student in the class. These are bullies. And you might be wondering, well, Deb, are you saying like don't ban that and fight that and get rid of it and let the bullies have their way? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying no. I'm saying learn from what I said help me. How did I deal with my bully? Did I go running to somebody and complaining and say, "Oh, make it better, fix the environment, make the bullies go away"? Or did I remove myself from the situation and learn as much as I could about the bullies and as much as I could about where they were going to be and how to not be where they were, or how to be with support if I had to go up against them or be where they were? There were times I had to cross paths with them, but I made sure when those occasions presented themselves that I was with other people and they didn't touch me. They didn't come near me because I had support. So the lesson to me is not find the right people to write the right law, to ban the people, to push back, punch these bullies back in the face or become just like them. That's even worse. It's leave. Where are they? Don't be where they are to the extent that you can. And where you have to be where they are, go with others. Go with support. So what I believe should be happening with regard to the school bullies, whether they're the kid bullies of the school, if your child's being bullied by kids at school, get your kid out of the school. Because if I've told you nothing else today, it's that this school cannot help you, cannot help your child. And it's gotten to a level of verbal and relational aggression that no matter, it's too late for you to try to tell your child sticks and stones. It's probably too late. And if your child is on the spectrum, forget about it. That lesson won't even really work because the environment is so toxic, and that is just, they have a very defined sense of right and wrong, and it's pretty black and white, and you can't fight that. That's the way they're wired. So stop trying to fight it and just respect that's who they are and get them the hell out of there. Get them the hell out of there. And then you can have the conversation about how they can't define their worth by what other people think, but not while they're still in there. It's not going to work. Surround them with love and other people who understand that. But, find your group, find your support system of other people who have the sticks and stones mentality, have the empowering victims mentality, not empowering bullies mentality, and just stay away from those people. Get the hell away from them. You're not going to win any more than the kids who are in the schools are winning against their bullies, any more than people are defeating cancel culture by ratting out the cancelers. Doesn't work. Have you noticed the people who have tried to cancel someone and that person says, "I'm not apologizing. I refuse. I'm standing up for myself," have not been canceled? Have you noticed that? Or they've been successful in other ways. They've been picked up by another, station or another show or another this or another that, or they've somehow, been more successful on the other side. There's a lesson there. You don't apologize to your bullies. You don't go, "Mea culpa, let me wash your feet. Let me make amends. Let me, give into your Kafka trap." No, don't do it. As if you feel victimized by these people or you're about to be, hold your head up high and say no, and advise others to do the same, and get your kids out of these environments because it is asking a whole heck of a lot of them. You're either telling them the adults are not trustworthy in the environment where I send you all day, they can't protect you, right? Because you're not going to tell them, go tell the adults. I've just told you why you shouldn't do that. Not going to work. So then they're going to come away thinking adults can't protect me. And that's a terrifying existence for a child. Okay. So you're either lying to them or you're telling them, I can't protect you and neither can the people in there, but good luck. Or sticks and stones, even though it's like magnified to the 10th power from when we were kids. You could be bullied for like 75 different reasons more than when we were little. Um, anyway, that's just what I want to talk about today. Does anybody have any questions before I sign off for the day? Thank you for listening, you guys, and thank you for being here. I'm going to just scroll back through and see. Um, let's see what we have here. We've got. I was picked on by the whole class in fifth grade. When I attempted to fight back, the teacher punished me. But when the students went so far as to physically harm me in front of the teacher, nothing. My own daughter's been on the receiving end of that. I'm so sorry you went through that. And then you said, my parents went to the admin when they realized the teacher was participating in the bullying indirectly. And then I can't say how many times I specifically requested to be homeschooled. Oh. Is your name Siona? Siana? If you're still there, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Thank you for your comments. And you're not alone. Lots of kids feel that way. Parents, you may be surprised to know that your child who's going to school obediently every day and not saying anything to you would actually prefer to be homeschooled. That may be the case. May not, but it may be. If you have a kid who's being bullied that way and they've been complaining about it and they tell you, no, don't pull me out. Then it'll, whatever. My advice is ignore them and pull them out. They might be mad at you for a short period of time, and you're not sheltering them. You're not sheltering them. That would be like saying, I'm sheltering my child because I yanked them out of the middle of the street. You're not sheltering them. You're pulling them out of a dangerous, toxic environment that some would argue is straight up abusive at this point. So, they'll be mad at you, but as soon as you show them how it can be better and how they can find other friends and support and so forth, they'll forgive you. My youngest did. And most of the stories I've heard of people have as well. Let's see. This is from Angry Bubba. Because I was bullied as a kid, I'm now a strong, successful, happy adult. Made me tough but compassionate adult. I wouldn't change my childhood. Made me what I am today. I love me. And I wish I could tell you that we could hope for the same from our kids today that are being bullied in school. But as I said, it's a very different kind of bullying. It's passive aggressive. It's manipulative. It's cyberbullying. There's a relentlessness to the bullying today. 24/7, they can use social media. Even if your child doesn't have social media, a lot of parents have told me, my kid doesn't have social media. My kid doesn't have a phone. This isn't going to affect my kid. Even if your kid doesn't have it, if other kids at the school do, they can start having conversations about your kid through social media to organize little bullying sessions on the playground or after school or on the bus. They have the ability to reach out to dozens of people to get a rumor out that then when your child walks into school, that's what everyone's giggling and snickering about, and your kid's up against that. They can they can take pictures of your child on their phone, manipulate the pictures to make your child look weird or funny, print them out and plaster them all over the bathroom. There's so many things to do. I mean, technology has facilitated a kind of meanness that is truly despicable, evil. And even if it's only a tiny percentage of kids in a school doing it, the reach is magnified because of technology. So, still tell your kids, sticks and stones, empower them to stick up for themselves. It will still be much better than the alternative. I wouldn't tell them the adults aren't going to help you because unless they're older. If they're older, you can have a serious conversation, but not little kids. The best you can do is just tell them, like, Not everyone's going to like you, but that's okay. That doesn't mean they're right. It's one of the most important things you can teach a child is that whatever the world is telling you, and even if a lot of people are saying it, it doesn't make them right. Just because there are a lot of people saying something does not have anything to do with how correct it is. These are things we're not teaching our kids. And there's a reason we're not doing it. The reason the schools are not doing it is they're leveraging the opposite message. They're saying, the majority want X. Democracy says Y. Okay. The message kids are getting is majority rules. Majority is correct. There's virtue in numbers. They're explicitly teaching that. So if you're a bullied kid and you come into school and 15 or 20 kids in the hallway start snickering at you, pointing fingers and talking about a rumor that was spread about you on social media, even though you don't even have a phone, so you didn't know about it. And your lesson you've been taught since preschool is majority rules. The majority is correct. And feelings are reality. And that makes you feel like you're not worth being alive. What do you think happens next? The messages are ass backwards. So the only thing you can do is intervene and tell your kids the truth. So that is what, yes. And Patrick says, even worse, a minority is right if it's loud and obnoxious enough. So we've got the majority is right because they have superior numbers, unless the minority is loud and obnoxious. And don't forget, right now, it's firmly embedded in the culture, the right race. If they're the right demographic, the right identity group, because identity politics is firmly embedded in all of this anti-bullying stuff. So that facilitates bullying by those demographics. Again, I'm not accusing. I'm not saying anyone who is a member of, these preferred identity groups is suddenly a bully. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that those people who are in the approved political identity groups, that loud, obnoxious minorities that everyone seems to be cowering in front of, if there are bullies in those groups, they have just been handed the keys to the kingdom. There's no, good luck fighting them. You have zero in a school environment that you can fight. You, in fact, will likely be punished. Your child will likely be punished if you go and try to accuse somebody who fits into that category of bullying. In fact, like I said, it happened to one of my daughters. She was just standing near a bunch of people when a kid who was brown decided to accuse them of traumatizing him with their speech. They all had to go through the same discipline process and all had to apologize because their words were traumatizing. So now that kid learned the lesson that even though he probably shouldn't have threatened them with violence, physical violence, he now knows if next time he wants to get them, all he has to do is, they're talking about things that scare me. They said the word Trump and I'm scared and I'm traumatized and they need to be punished. And his feelings were valid. His feelings are valid. So even if all they do is go to the other kid and say, you need to not talk about that topic at school because it's very offensive to people. And we know this is happening. We know kids are being told they can't talk about certain things, that there are certain words that they're not allowed to use that are trigger words. We know they're told words are violence. Do you think that empowers the people who want to control other kids by controlling their speech? It empowers bullies. So yeah, it is a caste system. Charlotte is exactly right. It is their caste system. And then yes, the kids are getting the impression they don't exist except in a group and others have a right to them. Yeah, Brave New World. If you have a student, a kid, preschool or that age group, in a classroom where they are doing the bucket method of discipline, get out. That method, as touchy-feely as it sounds, is the root of this. If they're teaching rainbow fish, get out. Any kind of discipline or any kind of messaging that says you owe other people or other people's approval is how you will get out of timeout. You go into this corner with this imaginary or real bucket, and when other people fill your bucket with stuff, you can come out. When other people approve of you enough and forgive you. It is a public stoning minus all the mess. Everybody gets to stand around and say, God, I'm glad it's not me, but I don't mind that it's happening. I'm pretty sure they're not teaching the lottery anymore in English class. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And if you know anybody who's interested in the subject of bullying, please share this with them. And if you are interested in this or any other topic related to education, I hope you will consider joining my locals community at thereasonwelearn.locals.com. If you would like to support me in other ways, join the channel. But the biggest bang for your buck is to join thereasonwelearn.locals.com. I have 2 Zoom calls a week on Wednesday and Sunday, and it's a Wednesday evening at 7:30, Sunday at 6. And I help you with homeschooling if you're interested in how to get started, or if you're already doing it, you need moral support, if you need some tips on curriculum, if you're, dealing with any of these issues, or you're a teacher and you just want to figure out how to fight from within, something like that. Come join the community. That's where you'll find other like-minded people, because sometimes the best way to deal with these bullies is to have that support. That's what I'm trying to provide. So thank you all and have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.